Hi, Michael Hellickson here for Club Wealth. I'll bet the last time you got on a plane, the pilot had a pre-flight checklist. And I bet you're glad he did. Why? Because a pre-flight checklist ensures that you and all the other passengers are going to arrive safely at your destination knowing that everything that needed to happen, happened. It's interesting that real estate agents, when they go on listing appointments, by and large, do not have a checklist that they follow. I think it's important, don't you? Don't you think that your seller deserves an agent that has a pre-flight checklist so that you know and they know that you're covering all of the bases, that you're covering everything that needs to be covered every single time, and that you've dialed it in to perfection? Well, that's why we're talking today about the 44-point listing appointment checklist. So please pay very close attention to how we operate this checklist. Now, we're not going to be talking about the entire listing presentation or the listing appointment at this point. What we're going to be talking specifically about is the listing appointment checklist. If you want to learn more about the listing presentation or the listing appointment as a whole, take a look at the 37-minute guaranteed listing presentation, which is found in other places on our site. That being said, as you approach the appointment as a whole and you think about it from a checklist standpoint, there's a reason why we use a checklist instead of a presentation. We don't do a canned presentation of any kind. Why? Because sellers don't care about our awards, how great we are, all the great stuff we'd love to tell them, and all the testimonials in the world that we've got. Are some of those things important? Is it good if they have access to that information? Sure, but you don't need to go over that at the listing appointment. In fact, I would challenge you, next time you're on a listing appointment, try having just one single sentence, just one sentence that you get to share with that seller about you. If you can synopsisize why they should do business with you in one sentence and focus the entire rest of the appointment on them and what they want, you'll have better success. Because what do people really care about? They care about WIIFM. That's what's in it for me. That's what they care about. So show them what's in it for them. Give them the education that they need and deserve. Come from a place of contribution instead of from a place of, hey, I'm trying to get your business. You'll get the business. Take the assumptive close. As Ben Affleck says in the movie Boiler Room, act as if. You'll get the business. Don't feel like you've got to chase the business. It will be attracted to you when you handle your listing appointment checklist properly. So let's go through the mechanics of the checklist for a moment. This upper right-hand corner, this is stuff my staff is going to fill out. They're going to make sure that they've got the agent's name on there, because it might not be me. It might be one of my other agents that goes on the listing appointment. If you're the Lone Ranger, do that anyway. It makes you look like you're a part of the team or a part of a team and a bigger agent if your seller happens to be looking down at the paper and sees that your name is written on it. The appointment date and time are going to be up there. This is important, especially if I have multiple appointments I'm going on throughout the day. I want to make sure I'm grabbing the right appointment when I get there. Also, I want to see who referred this appointment to me. This is important. I don't want to have to be digging through stuff to figure out who referred this client to me. I want to see the seller's name and their contact information there as well. And I want to know the average sales price for properties in the area. And this is information that my assistant, my listing coordinator, Stephanie in my office, is going to get me so that I now have a basis for which to price this home. Now, some of you are thinking, oh my gosh, how can I trust an assistant to give me a value for this home? How can I possibly know what the value is until I've seen the home? Well, I'm here to tell you that those of you that run big teams already know this, but you're going to be able to tell the value of the home within 5%, one way or the other, in just about any market with just about any property. Now, for those properties that are a little bit more unique, guess what's going to happen? Every time you go on a listing appointment, stapled to your listing appointment checklist is going to be a very short form printout, active, pending, expired, and sold list of properties in the area, so that if you need to look at some comps really quick, you can do that. But we don't need a full-blown CMA. That's not necessary. Again, this is about educating the client on the process. This is not about spending a ton of time on unnecessary things. So, additionally, I'm also going to staple to that listing appointment checklist a copy of the property profile from the title company. Why? because I want to be able to tell, okay, does this have 2 bedrooms like it says in the property profile, or is it 3 bedrooms? And I'm going to make changes right on that property profile. I'm going to highlight it, mark right next to it so that my assistant can see that, nope, that's not a 2 bedroom, it's a 3 bedroom. Again, I want to give my assistant every single thing she needs when I come back from that appointment, so I can just drop that paperwork off on her desk and I'm done with it. And now she knows and has all the information she needs to get her job done properly. All right, so this upper left-hand quadrant here, on your sheets that you see in the attachment, so you'll see, and if you haven't clicked on it already, there's a download on this page that will allow you to download the actual listing appointment checklist. Now, you're going to take off the Club Wealth information in the upper left-hand corner, and that's going to leave a big white space. It's done that way on purpose because when you want to go on a listing appointment, you're going to take your CRM, and we use Top Producer in our office, so we're going to print directly from Top Producer onto this checklist. So we actually have the checklist printed out. We run that same piece of paper back through the printer, print the name, phone number, email address, and physical address of that client right there in the upper left-hand corner. And that way, when I'm on the appointment, I can verify their contact information. I can make sure that I've got names spelled properly, I've got their email address down properly, all of that, phone numbers, and so forth. Very, very important to check that information. Now, when I get to the appointment, I'm going to talk, the first section of this checklist that I'm going to go through is this section on the right here. Now, again, I'm not going to walk you through every detail of the appointment, but I do want to walk you through all of the checklist items. Now, this section over here helps me identify, are they a short sale or are they a retail transaction? It's important to find this out right off the bat. Now, some of you are saying, well, Michael, I don't deal in short sales whatsoever. Okay, fine, but you still need to know if they're a short sale or not. Oh, well, Michael, I just deal in luxury properties. So there's no such thing as luxury short sales? Of course there is. Now, different markets fluctuate, whether based on time or location. Sometimes you have more short sales than others. Whether you're doing short sale or you're doing retail, it's important to find this information out, and it's important to know both facets of the business. And I'll tell you that I want to have with me on every appointment everything I need to handle whatever situation I might encounter. So whether they're a retail transaction or they're a short sale transaction, I have the paperwork necessary to do what I need to do without having to come back. That's important. All right. So once I've got their contact information down, I'm going to get their birthdays, their anniversary. Why? Because as part of my client appreciation program, I want to be able to contact them both in writing and on the phone. So I'm going to send them a personal note. I might make a phone call on their birthday, and I'm going to certainly post on social media on their birthday. By the way, here's a quick tip for you. Don't just post happy birthday on their profile on Facebook. Do a video of you singing happy birthday to them, or at least saying happy birthday to them. Video always gets better traction in social media than just text. All right. Now, after I've verified all that, I want to verify their email address, and I want cell phone numbers and email address for Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I also want to make sure I explain to them what it's like having their home on the market, and we're going to start with the key box. So I'm going to show them how, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is the key box. And here's how it works. It's electronic. It's going to track who was here, when they were here, how long they were here. It's going to help us ensure that your belongings are safe. Also, every time an agent calls you to show the property, they're going to call ahead of time. Now, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you get an agent who either forgets or for whatever reason, they just show up. Well, we want to get our home sold, right? That's the goal, is to get your home sold for as much money as possible, in as little time as possible, with the least amount of headache to you. Well, how do we do that? In order to do that, we have to ensure that we make it as available as possible. So if they show up at the last minute, we want to let them show the property. That being said, they have to open the key box. Make them open the key box. Why? It's for your safety. It ensures that they, number one, are a real estate agent, and number two, it ensures that my office can tell which real estate agent was out here looking at the property and how long they were here and so forth. That being said, if a buyer knocks on the door and they want to get into the property, don't let them into the property. Contact my office right away. We will then make arrangements to show them the property right away. We won't mess around. We've got a whole team in place for you to help you out with this. But it's important that that buyer work with one of our agents to show the house for a number of reasons. But number one, first and foremost, it's for your safety. The second thing is, we won't drop the ball with them. we will absolutely tenaciously follow up with them. And if there's a chance in the world that they're going to buy your house, we're going to make sure that we maximize those chances. So whatever you do, don't let them in without us or another agent present. All right. Then at this point in the checklist, I'm going to explain to the seller a little bit about my team. I'm going to introduce them to my staff. So I'm going to say something like, Mrs. Seller, we have a team of people that work in our company so that you can be taken care of quickly and efficiently, and so that all your needs are met. We have different people that are experts in different parts of the process. For example, we have a listing coordinator. Her name is Stephanie. Stephanie's job is to market your property as effectively as possible. She's going to follow up with agents to make sure that we get feedback on showings, and she's going to make sure that everything that needs to be done during that listing process is taken care of. Now, you may have questions. You may want to have some feedback during the listing process. Well, you can call me. You're always welcome to call or text me as well. But the reality is, if you contact me to say, hey, did you get this thing advertised? Did you, what's happening? How did that showing go this weekend? I'm going to have to call Stephanie to find out what happened with that showing, and then I'd be calling you back. So wouldn't it be even better if you were just able to contact Stephanie directly? So let me tell you, the best way to do that is to email her, and the reason why is because she's really good about cleaning her inbox out every single day. So she'll make sure she gets back to you in a timely manner with exactly the information you're looking for. You can call her, but she may not have that information at her fingertips, but I guarantee you that if you email her, you will get a response same day. Now, by explaining it this way to my seller, I'm again setting expectations properly, because one thing I don't want is I don't want to inundate my office with phone calls. I want to do the best job possible of minimizing the amount of inbound calls to my office, so that my staff can be as focused as possible when they're at their desks working away. All right, so then I'm also going to introduce my transaction coordinator. So I'll say something like, during the transactional phase, in other words, between the time when an offer is written and the transaction closes, during that period of time, there's another member of my staff that's going to be handling the transaction for you. Her name is Julia, and Julia is going to make sure that all the inspections and the appraisals and everything that needs to be done between offer and close is taken care of. She's very good at it. That's what she does. So if you have any questions during that point in the process, here's her information. Now, keep in mind, as you can tell, I haven't even listed the property at this point. I haven't even got the commitment from the seller that they're going to list the property with me at this point. That's okay. This is my presentation. This is exactly how I get them to agree to list their property with me, because I'm talking to them about the process. I'm setting expectations and instead of trying to sell myself. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is I've got a packet of information here. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in this packet is your Form 17, which is your property disclosure form, your listing input sheet. There's a quick survey. There's a few other things in here. I'm going to talk to them about what's in there. If it's a short sale, it's going to include my short sale packet. And I'm going to say, so I'm going to be leaving this with you today. So what's happening now is I've anchored them to a physical document. So I've got this packet of information and I've anchored their attention to this physical document. But instead of asking them for their business right now, I'm doing what's essentially, it's not quite a trial close, but it's a soft close. And so what I'm showing them is, look, we're going to be doing this. I'm setting their expectations properly so that when I get to the end of my presentation, I know they'll sign the paperwork. All right, and then I'm going to tell them about getting the sign up. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it could take up to 2 weeks to get your sign up. Now, is it really going to take 2 weeks? No, it's probably going to take 48 hours, but I want to prepare them for 2 weeks just in case. I want to under-promise and over-deliver. Now, in addition to that, I'm going to talk to them about the second sign, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But as we're talking about this, I'm looking at the outside of the house right when I walked in the house, and I'm noticing whether or not they have LP siding. Why? LP siding, for those of you that don't know, is Louisiana Pacific siding. In Seattle, where I'm from, there's a lot of homes that were built with LP siding. There's not very many of them left anymore. A lot of that's been taken care of, but if they have LP siding, it's important that we address it. This is essentially like a sponge on the outside of your house. And so if you're in Arizona or some more arid climates, chances are you either aren't encountering it or it's not a problem in your market. But in Seattle, it's a pretty big deal. And so I want to have that conversation with them. If they're on septic, I want to have that conversation with them. I want them to know that, look, if you're on septic, I'm going to need a health cert. I'm going to need a septic pump prior to closing. So again, these are expenses they're going to incur. It's very, very important that they are prepared for those expenses. I'm also going to talk to them about a well. If you have a well, I'm going to need a health certification on your well. I'm going to need it tested. Whatever you've got to go through in your market. And there's probably other things that you need to do as well. So again, add those to your checklist. Make sure you cover them at this time. All right, open houses. Whether you do open houses or not is not the issue. Now, do I believe in open houses? Absolutely. I think open houses can be a fantastic source of business. In fact, we used to get 25 to 150 people out to our open houses. How do we do that? We have an open house checklist that walks you through that. You can find that on our website at clubwealth.com. Now, that open house checklist walks you through exactly what you need to do to drive lots of people to your open houses and get business out of that. And when I say 25 to 150 people, I'm talking about unique buying units. So if Mr. and Mrs. Buyer show up at the same time, that's one buying unit. So if you're throwing open houses and you're getting, you're throwing a couple of signs up and you're getting 3 or 4 people or 6 people out to an open house, that's a waste of time. So you need to do them properly. That being said, whether you do the open houses or don't do the open houses, you need to explain and prepare them for that. So you're either going to say, I do open houses and here's why and here's how they work, or I don't do open houses and here's why. Then I'm going to do the same thing with brokers opens. One of the things I like to tell Mr. and Mrs. Seller at this point is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I don't do brokers opens because really it's just a chance for broke agents to come through and get a free lunch. And frankly, those aren't the agents that are going to sell your property anyway. Wouldn't you rather I spend my time focusing on finding those agents that are going to sell your property and marketing to buyers that are going to sell your property or that are going to buy your property? Absolutely. And you'll see I'm nodding my head up and down. Again, whether you do or don't is not the issue at this point. Remember, there's a million ways to sell real estate. I'm not trying to tell you there's one way to do it, because there's not. You can make money at this in a lot of different ways. But what you do need to understand is you need to set those expectations properly. Okay, now I want to cover, what if I'm on vacation or out of town? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you go on vacation or out of town, I am the very first call you make as soon as you make those plans. You need to call my office. You need to let them know that where you're going to be, how long you're going to be there, and how we get a hold of you when you're gone, in case an offer comes through. This is very, very important. All right, what about offers on weekends? We have a very specific offers on weekends strategy, and it helps us get our sellers much more for their house. Here's our strategy, or here's part of it, I should say. We don't accept offers on the weekends, period. Why? If somebody makes an offer on Friday, they'll wait till Monday to get a response. It's reasonable, right? And what happens on Saturday or Sunday potentially? We might get multiple offers. Then we can work those offers against each other and get the price up. On average, our listings used to sell for 101.5% of list price. That's awesome. You want to have that same kind of track record. This will not only help your seller make more money, it will also help you make more money, and it will help you get more listings, because now when you go on a listing appointment, you can say, hey, my average listing sells for 101.5% of list price. The competition is at 97% of list price. So just by virtue of listing the property with me, you're going to make an extra 4.5% on your listing. I mean, that's a big deal. And you do the math for them and you show them how much that's going to be. So you're going to make an extra this much because you've got it listed with me. All right. Now, another thing that's nice about having this conversation with the seller is that they now understand that they aren't going to expect any calls from you on the weekends, nor should they be calling you on the weekends. And guess what? That means you listing agents get to take the weekend off. Yes, I just said it. Real estate agents should be taking the weekend off. So when I was killing it at 100 transactions a month, I was literally working 4 days a week, 3 weeks a month. That's 12 days a month. I'd work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'd take Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. You guys can do this. You absolutely can do this. You just have to pre-plan and you have to set the expectations properly. All right, I also want to let them know that they need to send all offers through my team. So if an agent shows up and says, well, I've got an offer to present and I want to present it today to you, and I want to present it in person. No, that's not an option. First of all, I never, ever, ever, ever want another agent to be able to see the reaction on your face when you see the price on their offer. Second of all, you and I need to control the environment around those offers that come in so that we, again, can work the multiple offers against each other and get the price up as high as we possibly can. Third of all, and this is very, very important, you need to understand that that agent represents the buyer, and their job is to get the buyer the best deal they can possibly get the buyer. I represent you. My job is to get you the most money for your house possible in the least amount of time with the least amount of headache to you. Now, knowing that, would you like someone else to present an offer to you, or would you like me to be the one that presents the offers to you? Okay. Now, if you're going to have somebody else on your team present offers to your seller, then that's fine. You just need to make sure, again, that you set that expectation properly. All right. So, call before a concern becomes a crisis. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can't fix a problem if I don't know about it. So it's really, really important that you reach out to me and you call me and you let me know if ever you have a concern. Even if it's just a small concern, let me know, let someone on my staff know. We will take care of this for you. We have an entire team in place to ensure that you're happy and that your needs are met. All right, now we're going to go over included items. We're going to talk about, if it's a built-in appliance, then, if it's bolted to the wall, it stays with the home. Your refrigerator can go with you, but your built-in stove cannot. So whatever it is in your market that's standard, you need to make sure you're having this discussion with them. We also want to talk about don't ever sell personal items to the buyer. This is important. I've seen way too many transactions fall apart. I've seen 400,000, literally lost a 400,000 plus transaction over a $400 lawnmower. That's absolutely asinine to me that somebody would put themselves in a position. And why did that happen? Because there was a personality conflict between the buyer and the seller in the midst of this transaction over this lawnmower, and it cost the house sale. That's not a good thing. So never, ever, ever sell personal items to the buyer. Next thing I'm going to want to follow up on is leased fixtures. We want to have the conversation about maybe they've got a leased hot water tank or a leased security system, and that needs to be paid off before closing. Referrals. The next thing is referrals. This is huge. Yes, I literally stick this in here because I want to say to them, hey, I'm silently selling them on referring me. I shouldn't say silently, not so silently selling them on referring me. But the way that I do it is very interesting. So watch how this works. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, as we do a great job for you, we'd really appreciate it if you would refer us to your friends and family members that are thinking about selling a home as well. And the easiest way to do that is to just contact us with their name and number. So whether they're buying or selling, just contact my office, give us their name and number. As you see us doing a great job getting your home sold. And by the way, assuming we're doing a great job selling your home, wouldn't you want to refer us to people? Oh, absolutely. Do you see what I'm doing here? I'm nodding my head. You're going to notice that I do this throughout my presentations, whether it's me sharing a video with you or whether it's me in a listing presentation or with a buyer. We always do this. It's NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And so through your body language, you can elicit the response you're looking to get. One of the things that you have to do during your listing appointment is you have to get them into a yes state. Part of this is, rather than doing a listing presentation, again, where you're selling them on you and you're telling them how great you are, you're doing a listing appointment through a checklist where you're helping them understand the process. And as you do that, you nod your head and they're silently saying to themselves, oh yes, that makes sense. Oh yes, that makes sense. And every time you get them to, in their mind, say, oh yes, they are now coming into a yes state. You need to get this to happen between 9 and 11 times during your appointment to ensure that you get the yes at the end. All right. Now, updates. I'm going to have the conversation with them about how often am I going to update you. Again, it's not as important how often you do. It's more important that you set the expectation properly. So I'm going to ask them, would you like to have an update every week, every 2 weeks, or would you prefer that I just give you a call when we have a buyer? Oh, just give me a call when we have a buyer. Okay, fantastic. Now, they'll say that, but the reality is that when an agent takes a listing and doesn't follow up, regardless of what the seller says at this point, if you don't follow up with them at all, you're disappointing them. But if they say, oh, it's okay, just give me a call when we have a buyer. Now when you call them for updates, you're not meeting the expectation, you're exceeding the expectation. If, however, you didn't have this conversation with them and you just went about your business and you didn't call them, or even if you did, let's say you have the conversation and then you call them once a week, you are now meeting their expectation if you didn't have the conversation with them ahead of time. But by having the conversation and getting them to say, oh, it's okay, just call me when you have a buyer, you are now exceeding the expectation, and that's what we're after here. I'm also going to explain to them that they can go to our website for updates. So we use, like I said, we were talking about Top Producer earlier. We use Top Producer websites that we actually do a framed Top Producer website inside our website. So it's branded to us and not Top Producer, but it has all of that information in it. So the homeowner now can go in and they can log in with a username and password, and they can see every single thing we've done on that listing. It's really cool because by using the transaction coordination part of Top Producer, every single note we put in, every single activity we do for that listing, it gets automatically recorded on the seller's activity report. That seller's activity report now can be printed and emailed to them. I'm sorry, it could be emailed to them, or it could be printed and mailed to them, or I can drive them to that Top Producer client website where they can gather that, they can get that information there. So lots of different ways we can connect with them. Very important that we do this on a weekly basis, and I mean W-E-E-K, not W-E-A-K-L-Y. All right. Good stuff. So homeowners association and utilities, I want to have the discussion whether they're retail or short sale. I still want to have the discussion about the importance of paying your homeowners association dues and your utilities right up till closing. This is important. If you don't have this conversation, once in a while, you'll have a seller that forgets to do that. It's kind of like telling a buyer, don't go buy a new car or a bunch of new furniture just before closing. Don't buy anything on credit before closing because it could screw up your ability to buy the house. You're doing the same thing here for the seller. Again, having it on your checklist ensures that you're going to have the conversation every single time. Okay. Next, it's important that you remember to have the discussion with them about paying their homeowners association dues and their utilities all the way up till closing. Just like with a buyer, where you would tell the buyer, hey, don't go buy anything on credit before closing because it could blow your qualifications and you may not qualify to close on the house. You need to do the same thing with homeowner association and utilities and paying the second mortgage for the seller. Because a lot of times sellers just assume, well, you know, we've got an offer on the house, I don't need to pay these things anymore. Then they get behind, now you've got a problem, and or you get to closing and they need a little bit of extra money to pay those things. They weren't counting on needing to pay that at closing. They figured that the buyer would take it over. Now it's a problem at closing. So make sure you have this discussion and remind them. All right, next, dogs, cats, pets. Tell Mr. and Mrs. Seller it's important that Cujo not be here when the home is shown. And let me give you an example. I'm a dog person. Not everybody is a dog person. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you and I might enjoy our pets and we like our dogs and all that, but some people just don't. In fact, you and I have gone nose blind to our pets. What that means is, you know, I get that I've got, you know, a couple of dogs at my house, and my house to other people smells a little bit different than their house might smell because I've got pets in the house. Now that doesn't mean that the pets are defecating and urinating in the house. That's not what we're talking about. Even pets that are house trained and that go outside still leave an odor in the house that offends some people. And just because you and I aren't offended with it doesn't mean we don't need to address that issue. So a couple of things we want to do. One, make sure the pets are gone when the home is shown. Two, make sure any pet evidence is gone when the home is shown. I'm talking about food dishes and kennels and that sort of thing. To the extent possible, we're not trying to get you to change your lifestyle here, but if we can make sure some of that stuff is not in sight when the home is shown, that would be helpful. Three, grab some Febreze and spray it all over the house. Let's, you know, especially heavily in those areas where the pets tend to sit or lay down and those sorts of things. Make sure that we're eliminating as much of that odor as we possibly can, even if we don't realize it's there. Because for some people, they are extremely smell sensitive, and we want to ensure that we're not offending those people. All right, that being said, let's talk about the next part of our checklist. All right, so then we've got the short sale section. We go through again, we only go through this if it's a short sale, and we've identified whether or not it's a short sale because in the very beginning of the appointment, I actually go through this section on the right-hand side. This is the first section I go through when I show up at the appointment because I want to identify immediately whether or not it's a short sale. We go into more detail on this section in our actual 37-minute guaranteed listing presentation kit, where we've got videos of me actually in a live listing presentation, and we've got actual. You'll love it. You take a look at it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But this section is the one section that you go over at the very, very beginning of your appointment. Now let's assume that I've identified that it's a short sale. So if it is, and by the way, let me back up. Regardless of what market you think you're in, there's short sales out there. Regardless of what type of market we're in and where we are at in the market cycle, short sales will come back. They're always going to be there. Now, you need to be very skilled at retail and short sale, and if you're really sharp, you'll be skilled in REO as well. But for now, I'm just going to cover this section very briefly. I want to talk to them about the difference between loan modification, deed in lieu of foreclosure, and foreclosure. I want to explain those things to them. I want to talk about how long it takes to do a short sale. 4 to 10 weeks to find a buyer, and then 6 to 8 months for approval. Whatever time frame I'm dealing with, and that changes depending on what's going on in the market and how quickly banks can staff up and all this other stuff. So whatever the time frame is, make sure you know it and make sure you're able to articulate it to your seller. I'm also going to tell them that oftentimes the first buyer will fall through because they get tired of waiting for the bank. It happens. But I want to prep them for that so that when it happens, they're not devastated and that they're not thinking that we've done a bad job. I want them to understand that, hey, look, this is normal. Don't stress out about it. Next thing I want to talk to them about is in 24 hours, you're going to receive a packet from my office. I don't carry every one of the bank's packets with me in the car because I don't want to carry that much stuff in my car. But what I do want to make sure they understand is that they're going to receive a packet specific to their bank, and that they need to get this packet filled out and back to my office within 24 hours of receiving it. Also, I leave them with a packet that they need to fill out and have back to my office with the other packet. And so ideally, we want to get all this information back within 24 hours, and we have staff members whose job it is to follow up on that. All right. We want to make sure that they understand we got to put the dates on the hardship letter. We got to sign and date the letter of authorization. We've got to, there's going to be a BPO agent that's going to come through and take pictures of the home, and they need to accommodate them, and they need to be nice to them because that person is going to be, giving an opinion, a value of opinion on the home. All of that stuff. Anytime we have missing documents, it's important that you get back to us right away with those missing documents, and I continue to bring it back to their motivation. We don't want a foreclosure on your record. We want to make sure we get this short sale done. It's the best possible thing for you long term, and we want to continually come back to that motivation and help them understand the importance of this. Keep in mind, if they're a short sale, they're in a bad place in life. They're not making their house payment for a reason. They're depressed probably. They're financially not doing very well. They perceive real estate agents, like most people, as people that are overpaid and that make a bunch of money for doing nothing. And we, rather than fight that perception, just understand, be compassionate about their situation. It's not about you, it's about them, and it's about their situation. So be compassionate and yet be very professional during this process, especially if you're dealing with a short sale. Do not get sucked into their emotions. That's very important. Too often we get sucked into their emotions and we become emotionally attached to the outcome. You can't do that. You're a professional. Act like it. All right. So once I've gone through the third column, I come down here at the bottom. All of this stuff down here at the bottom of the checklist, this is for my staff. I want my team, most importantly my listing coordinator, I need her to know what has gone on my appointment. I need to give her all of the information that she needs. So I check off the box. Is the listing signed? Yes or no? So if it is, I check it off. If it's not and it needs a signature, maybe I'm missing Mr. or Mrs. Seller's signature. I'll get one of them, but maybe I don't have the other one. I'm still going to have them sign it. Even if they're not both there, I'm getting somebody's signature. Why? Because it's baby steps, right? Think about that movie, What About Bob? Baby steps, baby steps. Okay, some of you are too young to remember that movie. But in fact, most of you probably are. Maybe I'm dating myself. But the bottom line is, you got to get them taking baby steps. Get them making little commitments and taking little commitments every step of the way. So I'm going to get that signature. Then if I leave the paperwork with them, which is not ideal, I try not to do this. I really work hard at not doing this, but sometimes I need to. Sometimes I'm leaving paperwork that they need to send back to me, or a contract that they need to send back to me, so I'll check that. Or they're going to call us for pickup. So I'm also going to identify, is it okay to put a sign in the yard? Because it's not okay in every situation. And so I need to tell them when I want the sign put up, so I need to select a date. Maybe I want it put up right away. Maybe I want it put up in 4 days. I need to, they might want to have time to talk to a neighbor or two that are really close friends. And so I'm still going to get the listing signed today. I'm not going to have them tell me, well, we need to tell our neighbors first, so can you come back on Monday and get everything? No, heck no. Let's get it signed today. And we'll post-date everything, and so what will happen is we'll come back on Monday, and on Monday we'll put the sign in the ground, we'll put it in the MLS and all that good stuff. But again, be very careful with this. You need to understand the law in your area, and you need to understand your MLS rules. So don't do anything that's going to get you sideways with the state or with your MLS. At the same time, accommodate that person while still getting their signature. This is important. Also, the second location box, I need to know, where can I put a second sign? Let me tell you, one of the things that is a secret salesman for you is the second sign. Absolutely a great strategy. Whenever possible, I want a second sign on every one of my listings. So I'll put one sign by the house, I'll put another sign down the road, just like the for sale sign in front of the house. But I'll put another sign in the ground in a strategic location down the street, and maybe I'll even have an arrow pointing up to the house. But it's a straight up L-arm sign, and man, I tell you, you can't believe it. And I'll even put a flyer box on that sign as well as the one in front of the house. These are great techniques that help you get more buyer calls, which means you can feed your buyer's agents, which means they can make more money, which makes you make more money. Everybody wins, right? And the sellers and the buyers you're working with win as well. I also want to tell them, my staff, have I put the key box on already? Ideally, I've put the key box on. I will literally, the last picture I take of the, so I take all the pictures when I go through the house. The very last picture I take is the serial number on the key box. And this does two things. One, it tells my staff that's the last picture in the roll. Two, it tells them the serial number that's of the box that's on that house for tracking purposes, and so that when they want to know, who's showing the home and all that kind of stuff, they know which box goes to which house. I'm making my staff's job as easy as possible. Our teams need our help with this, agents. Please make sure you're making it as easy for them as possible. Now, sometimes I'll have to hide a key, or they'll hide a key for me. Maybe they don't have an extra spare key with me. They got to go to the hardware store and get a copy of the key. So I'll check the box and I'll write down where the key is hidden so that one of my runners can go back, or a buyer's agent or whoever can go back and grab that key and put it in the key box. Now, the easiest thing to do in a scenario like that is I'll take the insert out of the key box, I'll give it to Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and I'll say, okay, go get a copy of the key, put it in the key box, and then I'll teach them how to slide that up inside the key box, and we're done. And now I've got the home listed, I've got the key box on, I know the serial number, everybody wins, we're good to go. Now, I'll also write down what date I want this to go on the MLS. This is very important. I don't want to have to communicate this stuff to my staff when I get back. And by the way, if I'm going on 6 or 8 appointments in a day, and I know some of you are thinking that that's crazy and you're not, you'd be happy if you could go on 6 or 8 a week. I get that. For those of you that are mega team leaders, you know what it's like to go on 6 or 8 appointments a day. When you get back to the office, you need to be able to hand your stuff off and not have to have discussion with your staff about that listing. They should know everything they need to know, and you're off going out and listing the next home. So I want all that written down. I want to, again, make sure I write down the number of the box right there on this checklist. So I've taken a picture of it, and I've written the number down. This gives me 2 opportunities to ensure that my staff has the information they need. I check off the box. The pictures are taken. Why do I check off the box? Because sometimes things don't go the way I had them planned. Not very often, but sometimes things don't go the way I had them planned on that listing appointment, and I want to make sure that I don't leave there until I've got those pictures taken. Now, for those of you that are using professional photography, that's fine, that's great. You may want to have a checklist item that says hire a professional photographer, use the silver, bronze, or gold photography package or whatever. You just need to have checklist items that spell out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. All right, do I need to send a runner out to the house? I want to make sure that I've got that marked on there, and if I need to send them out, what do I need to send them out for? Are there any restrictions on showing? This is very, very important. No showings on Sunday mornings before 9 a.m. Whatever the restrictions are, it's very important I list this in my remarks. This happens down here on this bottom section. I want to make sure that I'm listing that there so that my staff knows what to put in the multiple listing service. Also, the marketing remarks. Now, I'm not going to write the marketing remarks as I'm sitting there necessarily. I might if I have time, and when you get really good at this, you probably will. When you get really, really good at this, while they're signing stuff, you're filling out the marketing remarks. It takes a little practice, but when you get to that point, it becomes very efficient, and it saves you another 10 minutes on every listing appointment. So I'm going to write those marketing remarks out very, very thoroughly and very succinctly, so that my team, my listing coordinator, can literally copy those remarks right out of there, put them in all the marketing that we do, and we're done. She doesn't have to think about anything beyond that. All right, down here further, you'll see where I've got the pricing. I've got a top price, I've got a 30-day price, and I've got a 90-day price. Why is this? Because we used to offer what's called a guaranteed sale program. And by the way, if you're not offering guaranteed sale, you should consider it. We want to reverse the risk for the client. It's very important that the client understand that we are willing to stand behind what we say we're going to do. So our guaranteed sale program was, we guarantee we'll sell your home in 30 days or less, or we'll buy it. That's a pretty strong guarantee. Now, that's not for the faint of heart, and you need to check with your broker before you offer this. And also, I would recommend you need to have a conversation with your Club Wealth coach about how to do guaranteed sale properly. And there's certain forms and addendums you need to use. You have to get signed by the homeowner if you're going to offer this kind of a program. All right, that being said, I want to make sure I've got the prices listed here that I am willing to guarantee the sale at. This is a price to sell it right now if it's in top shape. This is what it's going to take to get it sold in 30 days. This is what it's going to take to get it sold in 90 days. And you'll notice at the bottom there's a spot for the seller to sign on that. And also that acknowledges that they understand that we've gone over the guaranteed sale program and whether they are choosing to enter into the guaranteed sale program or they're choosing to opt out of that program. Okay, again, we're going to mark down how often we're going to call them and follow up with them. All of these things are very important. Clearly, there is much more that can be done. Go through the checklist. When you have questions on it, reach out to your Club Wealth coach. But whatever you do, make sure you're using a checklist on every listing appointment. Here's another tip that I'll give you that will really make a difference for you. When you're on those appointments, carry a red ink pen with you. It's very simple, and the reason why is you'll be on an appointment, you'll be going through your checklist, you'll be talking about things, and you're going to realize, you know, I need to put this in there. I need to add this thing that I need to talk about in there. Cool, just write a little bullet point in red ink. Or, you know, that doesn't apply in my market, so I'm going to take that off of my checklist. So you just circle it, cross it off, or whatever. But whatever changes you make them in red. Everything else you're doing in your blue ink, but the changes that you want to make to the template you do in red, it's an awesome way to ensure that you've got a living, dynamic document that's always pertinent, that's always relevant, and it always accomplishes what you need to accomplish, which is getting that listing. Remember, that's your goal when you're there. And by the way, let me give you one last little tip before we wrap up this video. The best closing line in the world. I've used this on literally thousands of listing appointments, and it works almost every time. So I want you to watch what I do because there's a physical element to this that's very, very important. So watch this. When I get all done with everything, I'm getting ready to go for my close. I'm going to ask them. I'm going to look them straight in the eye. And I'm going to smile, and I'm going to say the following. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? And guess what they say? Nope. Fantastic. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you fill out the Form 17 or property disclosure form. Now, I'm not going to be taking this form with me. I'm going to have you fill it out. I'm just going to have you sign the bottom of it, and you can fill it out after I've left, but I want to make sure your signatures are in the right spot. So, Mr. Seller, I'm going to have you sign here, Mrs. Seller, and I'm going to ask whoever has been the most engaged with me and whoever I know I've got them sold for sure, that's who I'm going to ask to have sign it first. And so I'm going to say, okay, Mrs. Seller, fantastic. So I'm just going to have you initial here, sign here. Perfect. Mr. Seller, there you go. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is blah, 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 blah. I want to get them putting pen to paper in as easy a way as I possibly can, a low barrier to entry. The very last thing they're going to be signing is the actual listing agreement. All right. I've covered a lot of information on this video. I hope it's been helpful to you. If it has, please put your remarks on the page. If there's a remarks section available on the page that you're looking at here, would love to hear your feedback on the video. Please share it with someone. We really do appreciate it when you share Club Wealth and the videos and the information that we put out with others. We'll continue to strive to bring you the very best information available in real estate today. My name is Michael Hellickson, again for Club Wealth, and you are world class.